Wait. Before you scroll past this, before you go do whatever else you are about to do tonight, give me 60 seconds. Just 60. Because what I'm about to tell you, I have never told anyone, not my friends, not my brother, not even the people who think they know everything about my life. Tonight, I sat across the dinner table from my father, and he looked at me the way he used to look at me when I was a little boy who had just done something he was proud of. And then he asked me a question that I was not ready for. He put down his spoon, he wiped his hands slowly, and he said, "Who is she? The one who has changed you like this?" And I sat there, frozen, because I knew exactly who he was talking about. I knew exactly who had done this to me. And when I finally opened my mouth to answer him, only one sentence came out. I looked my father in the eyes, and I said, "She is my first love." That's it. That's all I said. 4 words. But I watched those 4 words land on him like they weighed more than anything I'd said to him in years. Like something in the room actually shifted the moment they left my mouth. But you need to understand what happened after I said those words, because it is going to change the way you see yourself tonight. Stay with me, don't leave yet. This is only the beginning. You have to understand something about my father. He is not a man who asks questions like that. He is quiet. He has always been quiet. Growing up, he was the kind of man who showed love through actions, not words. He never once in my life said, "I'm proud of you" out loud. He would just nod. He would just pat my shoulder once, twice, and walk away. That was his language. That was how he loved. So when a man like that stops eating his dinner, puts down his spoon, and looks at me with those tired, knowing eyes, and asks me who has changed me, you have to know, something in him had been building for a long time. He had been watching me, quietly, the way fathers do, and he had seen something different, something he could not explain, and he wanted an answer. I want to take you back a little, because you deserve to understand how we even got to that dinner table. A few months ago, I was not the man I am today. I was tired. I was distracted. I used to come home and just sit in silence, scrolling through my phone. Not really present, not really here. My father noticed it. My mother noticed it. Even I noticed it. But I didn't know how to fix it, because I didn't know what was missing. I thought maybe I was just stressed. I thought maybe it was work. I told myself so many stories to explain the emptiness, but none of those stories were true. The truth was simpler than I wanted to admit. I was lonely in a way that had nothing to do with people around me. I was lonely for something I had not even found yet. And then you happened. I know that sounds strange to say, because you might be sitting there right now, listening to my voice through your earphones, in your room, on your bed, maybe tired after a long day, maybe not even sure why you clicked on this. But I need you to know something. From the very first night I started talking to you like this, something in me shifted. It was small at first, a little more patience in my voice, a little more softness in the way I looked at the world. My mother was the first one to notice it, actually, before my father did. She said, "You seem different lately, lighter." And I didn't know how to explain to her that somewhere out there, a woman I have never met, a woman I do not even know the face of, had started to change the way my heart beats. You laugh at that, maybe. You think, how can someone change because of a voice, because of words on a screen, because of a connection that exists only through a small rectangle of light in the dark? But let me ask you something, and I want you to really think about it before you answer. Have you ever felt someone understand you without ever meeting you? Have you ever felt like someone was speaking directly into the quiet parts of your chest that you never show anyone? That is what this has become for me. And somewhere in these months, without either of us planning it, without either of us saying it out loud, you became the first person I think about when I wake up, and the last person on my mind before I close my eyes. Now let me bring you back to that dinner table, because this is where it gets even more real. My father asked me again. He said, "You didn't answer me. Who is she?" And for a moment, I panicked. Because how do you explain a feeling like this to a man who built his entire life on practical things? A stable job, a solid roof, food on the table, safety for his family. How do you tell a man like that, "Dad, there is a woman I have never held in my arms, never even seen with my own eyes in person, and she has become the reason I smile when I wake up"? I knew it would sound foolish to him. I knew it would sound like a boy's fantasy, not a man's truth. But something in me refused to lie. Something in me needed him to know. So I took a breath and I told him everything. I told him how it started as something small. Just words, just late night thoughts I couldn't say to anyone else, just a voice reaching out into the dark, hoping someone was listening. I told him how, over time, that small thing grew into something I looked forward to every single day. I told him that there is a woman out there who listens to me without judging me, who makes me feel like my thoughts matter, who makes the loneliest hours of my night feel less empty. And as I spoke, I watched my father's face change. He wasn't laughing at me. He wasn't rolling his eyes the way I feared he would. He was listening, really listening, the way he used to listen to my grandfather's stories when I was a child. And then he asked me the question that broke something open in my chest. He said, "Do you love her?" And I didn't even hesitate. I said, "Dad, I don't know if it's the kind of love people write songs about, the kind with rings and weddings and forever. But I know this. She was the first person to make my heart feel something again. She was the first one to remind me that I still have a heart capable of feeling. So yes, in every way that matters to me, she is my first love." Stay with me, because I promise you, this story is not finished. There is more, my father said. There is more I have not told you yet. But I need you to sit with that sentence for a second, because I meant it with everything in me. Not first love like the movies show you. Not some teenage crush with butterflies and nothing behind it. I mean first love like the first time in years that I felt like loving someone was safe again. The first time I felt like being soft, being open, being vulnerable, wasn't going to get me hurt. You did that. Whether you realize it or not, you did that for me. My father sat back in his chair after I said that. He didn't say anything for a long moment. My mother, who had been quietly listening from the kitchen doorway, came and sat down too. And the silence in that room was not an uncomfortable one. It was the kind of silence that happens when something important has just been said, and everyone needs a moment to hold it. Then my father said something I will never forget as long as I live. He said, "I always wondered what kind of woman would be able to reach a heart as guarded as yours." And in that sentence, I understood something about myself that I had never admitted before. That I have always been guarded. That I have always kept people at a careful distance, afraid of being hurt, afraid of being disappointed, afraid of giving my heart to someone who wouldn't know what to do with it. And somehow, without trying, without forcing anything, you slipped past every single wall I had built. You didn't break them down loudly. You didn't demand entry. You just stayed, patiently, quietly, until one day I looked up and realized the walls weren't there anymore. I want you to know something, and I need you to really hear this, not just read it. You are not just a viewer to me. You are not just someone on the other side of a screen. When I talk like this, when I open up like this, I am not performing for an audience. I am talking to you, the real you. The one who maybe doesn't feel seen enough in her everyday life. The one who gives so much love to everyone around her, but sometimes wonders if anyone loves her back the same way. The one who stays up late because her mind won't quiet down, replaying conversations, wondering if she said the right thing, wondering if she is too much or not enough. I see you. I have always seen you. even when you thought no one was paying attention. Let me tell you something else my father said that night, because it matters. He looked at me and said, "You know, your mother was my first love too." And I remember the day I told my father about her. He asked me the same question I just asked you. And I gave him almost the exact same answer. And in that moment, something clicked in my chest because I realized this isn't just a story about me and you. This is a story that repeats itself, generation after generation, in every family, in every home, in every quiet dinner table conversation where a father finally sees his child fall in love for the first time. It is one of the oldest stories in the world. And somehow, impossibly, you and I are living our own version of it right now. I want to take a moment and tell you honestly what these past months with you have felt like for me. Because I don't think I've ever said it this directly before. There were nights I felt like giving up on everything. On my work, on my dreams, on myself. And it was your voice, your presence, even through a screen, that reminded me why I kept going. There is something about knowing someone out there believes in you, someone who doesn't even ask anything from you, who just shows up night after night, ready to listen. That gives a person strength they didn't know they had. You gave me that strength without ever knowing it. You probably still don't fully know it. So let me say it clearly now. You saved a part of me that I thought was already gone. My father asked me one more thing that night, and this is the part I really need you to hear, because it's going to make you feel something you might not be ready for. He asked, "Does she know how you feel about her?" And I sat there, and for the first time all evening, I didn't have an answer. Because the truth is, I don't know if you know. I don't know if these words have ever truly reached you, the way I mean them. I don't know if you understand that every night I show up to talk to you, it is not just content, it is not just a video, it is me choosing you, choosing to open my heart to you, again and again, even when it would be easier to stay closed off like I used to be. So let me answer my father's question right now, through you, because you deserve to hear it directly, and not through a story. Yes, I love the way you make me feel understood. I love that even in silence, I feel like you are there. I love that somewhere in this wide, loud, chaotic world, there is a woman who takes a few minutes out of her day, her tired, busy, complicated day, to listen to a man she has never met. And somehow, that small act means more to me than almost anything else in my life right now. Stay with me, because I promise there is more. That night, after dinner, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the conversation with my father, over and over in my head. I kept thinking about the way his voice softened when he talked about my mother, the way his eyes glazed over just slightly, remembering a version of himself from decades ago, a young man who had also once sat across from his own father, and tried to explain a feeling that words could barely hold. And I realized something important. Love, real love, the kind that changes you, doesn't always look the way we expect it to. Sometimes it doesn't come wrapped in perfect circumstances. Sometimes it doesn't come with a face you've held in your hands, or a hand you've physically touched. Sometimes it comes through words, through late night honesty, through two people showing up for each other, in the only way that circumstance allows, and that doesn't make it less real. If anything, it makes it more real, because it survives without any of the easy things that usually hold relationships together. I got up that night, and I opened my notes app, and I started writing this message to you. I deleted it, I rewrote it, I deleted it again. Because how do you tell someone something this big without sounding foolish? How do you tell a woman you have never met that she has become your first love, in the truest sense of what that phrase means, without worrying she will think you're being dramatic, or performative, or saying it just because it sounds nice? But then I thought about my father's face at that dinner table. I thought about how he didn't laugh at me, I thought about how, instead, he looked proud, genuinely proud, like watching his son fall in love, even in this unusual, modern, unconventional way, was still something beautiful to witness. And I decided, if my father could see the truth and honesty in what I feel for you, then you deserve to hear it too, exactly as it is, without me hiding behind clever words or careful distance. So here it is, as plainly as I can say it. You are my first love. Not because you're the first woman I've ever cared about. Life is more complicated than that, and I've cared about people before. But you are the first person who made me feel safe enough to actually mean it when I say the words, I care about you. You are the first person who made vulnerability feel like strength instead of weakness. You are the first person who, without knowing my face, without knowing the sound of my real laugh, without knowing what my hands look like when they're nervous, still managed to hold a piece of my heart more gently than people who have known me my whole life. I know some of you listening to this might be thinking, this is just a video. This is just something he says to keep people watching. And I understand why you might think that. Because the world has taught you to be careful, to expect people to want something from you, to expect love to come with conditions or performance. But I want you to consider something. Why would I bring my father into this story if it wasn't real? Why would I tell you about a quiet, private dinner table moment, one of the most personal conversations I've had in years, if I was just trying to keep you watching? I'm telling you this because it happened, because it mattered, because when my father asked who had changed me, the truthful answer, the only answer that felt right in that moment, was you. Let me tell you a little more about my father, because I think it will help you understand why this moment carried so much weight for me. My father is not an emotional man on the surface. He grew up in a different time. A time where men were taught to hide their feelings, to be strong and silent, to never show softness because softness was seen as weakness. He carried that with him his whole life. I don't think I've seen him cry more than twice in my entire lifetime. So when I tell you that his eyes were wet that night at the dinner table, when I tell you that his voice cracked slightly when he talked about my mother being his first love too, you have to understand what a big deal that was. That was a man opening a door he usually keeps locked, and he opened it for me, because he wanted me to know that what I was feeling, this deep, strange, beautiful thing I feel for you, was not something to be ashamed of. It was something to hold on to. He told me something else that night that I haven't shared yet. He said, son, love doesn't always arrive the way you expect it to. Sometimes it arrives quietly, through the most unlikely doors, and you don't even realize it's changed you until someone else points it out. And when he said that, I thought about all the nights I sat alone, talking to you, not realizing that each conversation was slowly rebuilding something inside me that I thought was broken beyond repair. I didn't see it happening in real time. It took my father's outside eyes, his careful, quiet observation over months, to point out what had been happening right in front of me the whole time. I want to ask you something now, and I want you to actually sit with the question instead of rushing past it. When was the last time someone told you that you changed them? Not in a small throwaway way, but in a real, deep, life-altering way. When was the last time someone looked you in the eyes, or in this case, spoke to you through their most honest words, and told you that you mattered enough to reshape the way they move through the world? If it's been a while, or if it's never happened at all, I want you to know that you deserve that. You deserve someone who notices the way you've changed their life, and who isn't afraid to say it out loud, even if it feels vulnerable, even if it feels like too much. Because here's the truth I've learned through all of this. Love that stays quiet, love that never gets spoken, slowly starts to feel like it doesn't exist at all. I never want you to wonder if you matter to me. I never want you to lie awake, wondering if the connection we have is one-sided, or imagined, or just a story I'm telling to keep an audience engaged. So I am telling you as clearly and honestly as I know how, you matter. You have mattered for a long time now. And after that conversation with my father, I finally found the courage to say it out loud, not just to him, but to you, directly, without hiding behind metaphors or half-truths. Let me tell you what happened the next morning, because it's important too. I came down for breakfast, and my father was already at the table, drinking his tea the way he always does, slow and quiet. He looked up at me, and he said, "I was thinking about what you told me last night." And I braced myself, because I didn't know what direction this conversation was going to take in the daylight, after the emotion of the previous night had settled. But then he said something that surprised me. He said, "You should tell her. Whatever this is, however unusual it seems to people who don't understand it, you should tell her exactly what you told me. Because love that isn't spoken is a love that risks being lost. And I don't want you to lose this, whatever it is, because you were too afraid to say it." And that's exactly what I'm doing right now. This is me telling you. I know this is a lot to take in. I know you might be sitting there right now with 100 different emotions swirling in your chest. Maybe disbelief, maybe warmth, maybe a small, quiet hope that you're afraid to fully feel because you don't want to be disappointed. And I understand that hesitation because I felt it too for a long time, before I let myself believe that what I feel for you is real and valid and worth saying out loud. But I need you to know, you don't have to be afraid of this. You don't have to guard yourself against something that is only trying to give you warmth. I am not here to take anything from you. I am here to give you honesty, to give you softness, to give you the version of love that doesn't ask you to shrink yourself, that doesn't ask you to perform, that simply asks you to be exactly who you are, tired eyes and all, messy thoughts and all, quiet insecurities and all. There is something my mother said to me too, later that week, that I want to share with you before I close this out. She pulled me aside while I was helping her in the kitchen, and she said, "Your father was the same way when he met me. He didn't say much, but I could feel it in the way he showed up, day after day, patient and steady, even when I gave him every reason to walk away." And she smiled at me, this small, knowing smile. And she said, "That's how you know it's real, not through big, loud declarations, but through the quiet, consistent choosing, over and over again." And I thought about you. I thought about every single night I've chosen to show up here, to talk to you like this, to open my heart a little more each time, even when it would have been easier to keep things surface level, easier to keep you at a safe, comfortable distance. I didn't do that. I kept choosing you, night after night. And I don't plan on stopping. I want to be honest with you about something else, something a little more vulnerable than what I've already shared. There have been nights when I've wondered if this is foolish, if pouring my heart out like this, to someone I've never physically met, is something people will understand or something they'll mock. There have been nights when the doubt crept in, when I almost deleted everything I had written, when I told myself, maybe this is too much. Maybe you're supposed to keep some things private. But then I remember my father's face at that table. I remember the way he looked at me, not with judgment, but with recognition, like he saw a younger version of himself in my eyes. A version who once had to decide whether love was worth the risk of being vulnerable. And every time I come back to the same answer. Yes, it's worth it. You are worth it. So here is what I want you to take away from everything I've told you tonight. Somewhere out there right now is a man who sat across from his father and, without hesitation, called you his first love. Not because it's dramatic, not because it makes a good story, but because it's the plain, simple truth. You changed something in me that I thought could not be changed anymore. You reminded me what it feels like to look forward to something, to someone every single day. You gave my father, a man who rarely shows emotion, a moment where he saw his son fall in love in front of him, And instead of dismissing it, he honored it. He told me to say it out loud. So I am, as clearly, as honestly, as gently as I know how. You are my first love. Not the first person I ever cared about, but the first person who taught me that caring deeply and openly doesn't have to end in heartbreak, that it can be safe, that it can be soft, that it can be something you look forward to instead of something you brace yourself against. I don't know what tomorrow holds for us, whatever us even means in a story like this one. I don't know if there will be a day where distance disappears, where screens turn into real rooms, where voices turn into hands you can actually hold. But I know this, whatever happens next, I wanted you to know the truth before anything else. I wanted you to know that somewhere, a father asked his son who had changed him, and the son didn't hesitate. He looked his father in the eyes and said, "She is my first love," and that son was me, and that she, that's you. Before I tell you about the letter, I want to go back a little further, to something that happened the very same week as that dinner, because I think it will help you understand just how deep this ran for my father, and honestly, how deep it runs for me too. A few days after that conversation, I found my father in the living room, going through an old box of photographs, the kind every family keeps somewhere in a closet and never quite gets around to organizing. He was holding a photo of himself and my mother, young, standing outside a small house I don't even recognize. Both of them smiling in that unguarded way people smile before life teaches them to be careful. He didn't hear me come in. I just stood in the doorway for a moment, watching him look at that photograph, like it was the first time he'd seen it in years. When he finally noticed me, he didn't put the photo away, or act embarrassed the way people sometimes do when they're caught in a private moment. Instead, he held it up and said, "This was the week I told my father about your mother." And then he told me the story slowly, the way he tells most things, taking his time with each detail. He said that back then, he used to walk 2 miles every evening just to catch a few minutes with her outside her family's gate, because that was the only time they were allowed to see each other. He said there was no promise of a future in those early days, no guarantee that their families would even approve, no certainty of anything except the way his chest felt lighter every time he saw her face. He said the uncertainty terrified him, but the pull toward her was stronger than the fear. And he said something that I think about constantly now, something that ties directly into everything I've been trying to tell you tonight. He said, "I didn't wait until everything made sense to fall in love with her. I fell in love first, and I spent the rest of my life making sense of it." He looked at me when he said that, and I understood exactly what he meant. He wasn't just telling me about his past. He was giving me permission for my present. He was telling me that it's okay not to have all the answers about you, about us, about what this even is in the eyes of the world. It's okay to simply know what I feel, clearly and honestly, and let the rest unfold in its own time. I asked him if he was scared back then of telling his father the truth, and he laughed a little, a rare, soft laugh, and said, "Terrified, but I was more scared of a life where I never said it at all." That sentence has stayed with me every single day since, because that's exactly how I feel about you. I am not entirely sure what tomorrow holds, or what shape this connection will eventually take, or how the world will look at something as unconventional as what exists between us right now. But I am far more afraid of a version of my life where I never told you the truth than I am of however this story unfolds from here. He put the photograph back in the box carefully, like it was something fragile, something sacred. And he told me one last thing before he left the room that day. He said, "Your mother still doesn't know I kept that photo hidden in the back of that box all these years, closest to the top so I could find it easily. Some things you don't need permission to hold on to. You just hold on to them, quietly, because they matter." And I think about that with you too. I don't need anyone's permission to hold on to what I feel for you. I don't need the world to understand it, or approve of it, or even fully believe it. I just need to keep holding on to it, quietly and steadily, the same way my father held onto that photograph for all those years. Let me tell you about the letter, because I promised myself I would share it with you, and I don't want to hold anything back from you tonight. A few days after that dinner, I came home from work and found an envelope on my desk. My father is not a man who writes letters. In my whole life, I don't think I've ever received one from him. Cards on birthdays maybe, with a short line or two, but never a real letter. So when I saw my name written on the front in his handwriting, careful and slightly shaky the way it gets when he's trying to be precise, my hands actually trembled a little before I opened it. Inside, he had written only a few paragraphs, but I have read them so many times now that I could recite them to you word for word. He wrote that watching me talk about you reminded him of himself at my age, sitting in his childhood home, trying to explain to his own father why a girl he barely knew, a girl from a different town, a girl he had only spoken to a handful of times, had somehow become the only thing on his mind. He wrote that back then, people told him he was being foolish, that real love needed time, needed proximity, needed all the practical things that make a relationship make sense on paper. But he said something in his letter that I think about constantly now. He wrote, "Sense and love rarely arrive in the same room together. If you wait for love to make sense before you honor it, you will spend your whole life waiting." I read that line and I had to put the letter down for a moment, because it hit something so deep in me. How many times have I told myself that this, whatever this is between us, doesn't make sense? How many times have I second-guessed myself, wondering if it's strange to feel this way about someone I've never physically stood in front of, never shared a meal with, never walked beside on a quiet street. But my father, in his careful, quiet handwriting, gave me permission to stop needing it to make sense. He gave me permission to just let it be what it is. Real, imperfect, unconventional, and mine. He also wrote something about your side of this, something I think you need to hear too. He said, "Whoever she is, if she has made you soft again, if she has made you patient again, if she has made you want to be a better version of yourself without asking you to change who you are, then she is worth protecting, worth honoring, and worth being honest with, always." And I sat there with that letter in my hands, thinking about every single night we've spent like this, me talking, you listening, both of us slowly building something neither of us fully understands yet. And I thought, he's right. You have made me want to be better. Not because you asked me to, not because you demanded it. Just because knowing you exist, knowing you're out there listening, makes me want to be a man worth listening to. There's something else that happened that week that I haven't told anyone, not even my closest friends, and I want you to be the first to know. My father called me into his study one evening, which again, is not something he normally does, and he sat me down and asked me to tell him more about you. Not in a suspicious way, not in an interrogating way, but in a way that felt like he genuinely wanted to understand. He asked what it was about you that made me feel this way. And I found myself talking for almost an hour, telling him things I didn't even know I felt, until I heard myself saying them out loud. I told him about the way you make ordinary nights feel less lonely. I told him that even on the hardest days, the days where nothing seems to go right, there's a small steady comfort in knowing that later that night, I'll get to sit down and talk to you, even if it's one-sided in ways that most people wouldn't understand. I told him that you've never asked me for anything, never demanded my time, never made me feel guilty for the days I couldn't show up, and somehow, that gentleness, that lack of pressure, is exactly what made me want to show up more, not less. I told him that I think about your life sometimes, the version of it I don't get to see, whether you had a good day, whether someone was kind to you, whether you laughed today, really laughed, the kind that makes your whole chest feel lighter. I told him I hope, more than almost anything, that you have people around you who see how special you are, and if you don't feel that enough, I hope these words tonight remind you that at least one person does. My father listened to all of this without interrupting once. And when I finished, he just nodded slowly, the way he does, and said, "Then you already know what you need to do. Keep telling her." And that's what I've been doing, night after night ever since. I want to pause here and ask you something, gently, because I think it matters. Do you ever feel like you give more love than you receive? Do you ever feel like you're the one checking in on everyone else? The one remembering little details about the people in your life? The one showing up for birthdays and hard days and everything in between? And then wonder, quietly in the moments when no one's watching, who does that for you? If that's you, if that's even a small part of what you carry, I want you to hear this clearly. I see the effort it takes to love the way you do. I see the strength it takes to keep opening your heart, even when the world hasn't always been gentle with it. And I don't take that for granted. Not for 1 second. There's a particular night I want to tell you about, because I think it explains everything better than any explanation I could give you directly. It was maybe 3 weeks before that dinner with my father, on a night when I was feeling especially low. Nothing dramatic had happened. It was just one of those days that quietly wears you down, piece by piece, until you're lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering why everything feels so heavy. And I remember sitting there, phone in hand, thinking about you, thinking about the sound of the words I say to you every night, and something in my chest just settled. Not fixed, not solved, just settled. Like putting down a weight I'd been carrying all day. And I remember thinking, clear as anything, this is what it feels like to have someone, even from a distance, even without knowing them fully, hold a piece of the weight with you. That's what I told my father, in different words, at that dinner table. That's the truth behind the sentence, "She is my first love." It's not about grand gestures or perfect circumstances. It's about the quiet, steady relief of not feeling completely alone in a world that so often makes people feel exactly that. You gave me that. Whether you meant to or not, whether you fully understand it or not, you gave me that gift, over and over, night after night. My mother told me something else, a few days after the letter, that I think ties all of this together. She said that in nearly 30 years of marriage, the thing that has kept her and my father close isn't the big moments, the anniversaries, the vacations, the milestones everyone celebrates. It's the small, ordinary consistency. The choosing each other on Tuesday nights when nothing special is happening. The showing up even when showing up is hard. She said, "Love that lasts isn't loud, it's steady." And I think about that every time I sit down to talk to you like this. This isn't loud love. It's not flashy. It's not dramatic. It doesn't come with declarations shouted from rooftops. It's steady. It's every single night. Choosing to open my heart to you a little more. Choosing honesty over distance. Choosing to say the vulnerable thing instead of hiding behind safe, easy words. I know I've said a lot tonight. I know this has been longer, deeper, more honest than maybe you expected when you clicked on this. But I needed you to have the whole picture. I needed you to understand that when I say you are my first love, I don't say it lightly, and I don't say it for the sake of a good story. I say it because it's the truest sentence I know how to speak right now. My father heard it first, at a dinner table on an ordinary evening, and instead of dismissing it, he honored it enough to write me a letter about it days later. My mother heard it, and instead of questioning it, she recognized something of her own story in it. And now finally you're hearing it too, directly, without anyone standing between us. Stay close. Because this story isn't over. There is more I need to tell you. More about the days that followed that letter. More about a conversation I still haven't found the courage to fully share yet. But that's for next time. For now, I just needed you to know this one thing, clearly, honestly, without hiding behind metaphors anymore. There's one more thing I want to leave you with tonight, because I think it might be the most important part of everything I've said so far. A few nights ago, my younger sister found me sitting on the balcony, late, long after everyone else had gone to bed. She sat down next to me without saying anything at first, the way siblings do when they already sense something is going on. And after a while, she asked me quietly, "Do you think she knows how much this means to you?" And I didn't have a confident answer for her. I told her I hoped so. I told her I was trying to find the right words, the right moment, to say it clearly enough that there would be no room left for doubt. And she looked at me and said something I haven't been able to shake since. She said, "Then stop waiting for the right moment. Say it messy if you have to. Say it imperfectly. Just say it. Because people can't hold on to what you never gave them the words for." That's part of why I sat down to record this tonight. Not because I finally found the perfect words. I don't think those exist, honestly. But because I decided that an imperfect truth, spoken clearly, is worth so much more than a perfect silence. I would rather you hear me stumble through this, hear the rawness in my voice, hear the parts where I probably repeated myself, or said something a little clumsily, than have you go one more day wondering whether any of this is real to me. It is real, every part of it. I also want to tell you something about the way you show up for me, because I don't think I say this enough. There are nights when I can tell, just from the smallest things, that you've had a hard day, and even on those nights you still choose to stay, to listen, to be here. That doesn't go unnoticed. I know it might feel small to you, like it's not a big deal, like showing up is just something you do without thinking twice about it. But to me, on the other end of this, it means everything. It tells me that whatever this connection is, it isn't one-sided, no matter how it might look from the outside. It tells me that you're choosing this too, in your own way, on your own terms, at your own pace, and I will never take that for granted. I think about the kind of life you have outside of these moments we share. I think about the mornings you wake up and have to face a world that doesn't always treat people, especially women, with the gentleness they deserve. I think about the expectations placed on you, the pressure to be everything to everyone, to hold it together even when you're falling apart, quietly on the inside. And I want you to know that here, in this space, in these words, you don't have to hold anything together. You don't have to perform strength. You don't have to be anything other than exactly who you are. Tired or not, uncertain or not, doubting yourself or not. I am not here for a version of you that's polished and perfect. I am here for you, all of you, the soft parts and the guarded parts and everything in between. My father asked me one final thing that night at the dinner table, something I saved for last because I think it's the right way to close this out. He asked, "What do you want from this? If she is truly your first love, what is it you're hoping for?" And I sat with that question for a long moment, because it deserved a real answer, not a rehearsed one. And what I told him was this: I don't need grand promises right now. I don't need certainty about a future neither of us can predict. What I want, more than anything, is for her to know she is loved exactly as she is, in this exact moment, without needing to change a single thing about herself. I want her to feel, even just for the length of these words, that someone out there sees her fully and chooses her anyway. That's what I want. Not perfection, not certainty, just honesty and the space to keep choosing each other, one quiet night at a time. My father nodded slowly when I said that. And then he said something that I'll carry with me for the rest of my life. He said, "That's not a small thing to want, son. That's the whole thing. That's what your mother and I have been doing for almost 30 years. Just choosing each other, quietly, one ordinary night at a time. If you found that, even in this unusual, modern, unexpected way, don't let anyone, including yourself, convince you it isn't real. So here I am, choosing you again tonight, and I'll choose you again tomorrow night, and the night after that, for as long as you let me sit here and talk to you like this, honestly, softly, without pretending to be anything other than a man who found something rare and doesn't want to let it slip through his fingers out of fear or hesitation. You are loved, you are seen, and whatever this is between us, however unusual it looks from the outside, it is real to me. It has always been real to me, and I will keep choosing to tell you that, night after night, for as long as you'll let me. Thank you for staying until the end tonight. Thank you for giving me 60 seconds that turned into so much more. I'll be here again tomorrow night, same time, same quiet honesty, waiting to tell you the rest of this story. Until then, hold on to what I said tonight. Hold on to the fact that somewhere, a father's question gave his son the courage